One of the most important skills a writer can learn is not to be too precious. And my guest today, John Huss, learned that working in sitcoms, in the trenches of late night TV, and brought all that with him into kids' animation. So, from the structure of a story to the structure of a single joke, we get really crafty in this episode. It was a fascinating conversation. Here we go. All right, this is the story series, the podcast for writers who break the rules. John Huss, welcome.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the podcast, so I'm happy to be here.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm thrilled to talk to you.
Yeah.
Um, we were talking a little bit before this. You're an incredibly prolific writer across different genres. Just to go over a few of your credits, everything from recently Iron Man and His Awesome Friends. You're working on Spidey, Firebuds, WordGirl. You've also have a background as a comedy writer, Showbiz Show with David Spade, Jimmy Kimmel, Drew Carey Show.
Yeah.
So sitcom and talk show format. So I excited to kind of dig into all that with you.
Great.
But I'd love to kind of go back and just kind of connect the dots a little bit. So
Sure.
where did you grow up, John?
So I grew up in Manchester by the Sea in Massachusetts.
Oh,
So
okay.
north of Boston. I don't know if you saw the movie, but
I love that movie
it's an amazing movie.
so much.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place to go up. It's not as depressing as the movie would have you believe, but just small coastal town. The
Ah,
house I grew up in was built in 1725, so a lot of history. It's beautiful small town coast. It
yeah.
was awesome. Yeah.
And were you always, like, creatively inclined growing up? Like, what was your
Yeah.
kind of first, like, early ambitions?
Yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I mean, I always liked comedy, like a lot of people, I read Mad Magazine. And then for me, the big thing was when The Simpsons premiered. I think it was like 1990. That sort of like changed my whole life trajectory. I feel like for a lot of comedy writers and people who get into it, that is sort of the gold standard. That's the thing where you watch it and you're like, oh my God, these jokes are so good. They're so smart. The stories are great. It still has heart. It's relatable. And I was like, that really was the biggest influence on me. And I sort of always like to joke around. I was kind of like like a wisecracking kid, I guess, in the old days. And, I went to college and I went to a place that was very pre-professional. I went to Penn, which is like they have the Wharton School there, and a lot of my friends are going into banking and consulting or pre-med or pre-law. And I knew that was not for me. Like, just don't have that kind of brain or the interest. And when they were recruiting for jobs, like, I got a flyer for the CBS Writers Workshop, which was like a sitcom program, and I thought, "Wow, I never thought about that, writing a sitcom," but, like, so I got a bunch of books, and I sort of wrote this very, very bad spec script, but it was really fun in the process. Like, I was like, "Wow, this is cool, like, to be able to get paid to do this.
Yeah.
If I could do this for a living, it'd be amazing," and I was thinking about it, and then Conan O'Brien came and spoke at our school, and he was like, "If there's anything you wanna do, you guys have this great education, go do it now." So I decided that day to move to LA and give it a shot.
And then what was your plan at that point?
So my plan was to try to get any kind of, get into the industry however I could. So when I came out, a friend of mine from college was working as an extra, and she's like, "You should come do this, it's fun." I'm like, "All right, I'll do it." I think I got paid $48 a day to be on, like, the background of all these, like, terrible sitcoms and lame movies, and it was just sitting around and, like, being herded away from craft service if you get too
Right.
close, like, "You guys are not part of this, you're just basically props."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, but it was, like, kinda fun. It was cool to, like, be on a TV set and see how all that worked,
Yeah.
and, all of these kids I was doing it with, they all wanted to be actors. I had no aspirations of being an actor.
So you were, like, the one who wanted to write. What
Yeah.
what did you have, in terms of, portfolio or samples at that time?
At that time, I just had the initial spec script, which was not good, and then I was writing a second spec script at the time.
Or was it a spec of a show?
Yes.
What did you spec?
Spin City. I don't know if
Oh,
you
Spin
remember that
City.
sh
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was Michael J. Fox, and then
Yes,
was it
exactly.
Charlie Sheen that
Yeah, Charlie Sheen took
took
over
over?
for him, yeah.
Okay, so you spec'd, Spin City,
Yep.
and that was you were trying to get that
Yeah,
trying to
try to, like, get in front of anyone I could,
yeah.
and then, I did this extra job and, it was just basically for the stories. Like, I ended up doing a monologue for Comedy Central at this Hollywood stage years later. I got clips of my shows and I, like, told the story about how bad I was as an extra, and it got a good response, so that was fun. But I was able to get a PA job on, a show called Mysteries and Scandals, which was like this not great entertainment show. Like it was a docudrama about old Hollywood, and like I didn't really have an interest in old Hollywood or docudramas for that
Another
matter.
job,
But
and
it
it
was a
was
job,
yeah.
and it was cool. A lot of young people out of college, so it was a nice group of people. But when I was out in Hollywood with a buddy of mine, he ran into someone he went to college with who was working on the Drew Carey Show, and so we became friends, my friend Chris Marvin, and we over the years, we just stayed in touch, and then all of a sudden, a PA job opened up on a comedy they were doing, an animated show called The Oblongs, which was a WB show created by a guy from The Simpsons, and I interviewed and I got it. So then I was just in the comedy world, which is where I wanted to be, but it was typical PA job, especially back then, making copies, delivering scripts at 3 in the morning, getting coffee, and my parents are like, "Why do we pay for you to go to this insane
Right.
expensive college for you to do this and, like, make minimum wage?" But, like, it was awesome. I was with, like, these super smart writers, I was exposed to the writers' room, and then it gave me time. I wrote, more specs while I was there. I had enough
Yeah.
downtime. Um,
You loved it.
I loved it. Yeah, I knew it's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in a room with funny people, joking around and telling good stories.
And then what are you trying to parlay that into? Are you still you
Yeah,
mentioned you're still writing a lot.
yeah, still writing and trying to get on the track. Back then, I don't know, it's maybe a little different now. It's like you go PA, then writer's PA, then writer's assistant, and then script coordinator, and then ideally staff writer. That was sort of the trajectory if they like you back in those days and like the sitcom days. So, um, after the Oblongs, they moved me onto a show called Nikki, which is a live action multicam show. And made me a writer's assistant, and they asked me to write an episode, which was awesome. So, but as I was writing it, the show got canceled. So, like, my parents are flying out from Boston and they land and the show is done, right? So, like,
Welcome to
yeah, what
Hollywood.
exactly? It's such a the highs and lows, right? That's exactly what it is. But they were still contractually obligated to shoot the final episode. So my parents are the only ones in the whole studio. It's like, it's a multicam, big soundstage. My mom and dad are just sitting there, and the actors are understandably phoning it in because the show's canceled. So, like, it was such a welcome to Hollywood moment, just like you said, like,
That's a wild story.
yeah,
It's
it
a
was
wild
great.
visual.
Right, but now I could say I wrote the series finale to the show.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, so I've got that going.
and how did you feel? Did you kind of disappointed? Did you kind of roll it off?
I
A
mean,
hard lesson to
it
learn?
was yeah, it was a hard lesson. I mean, to have this huge high of writing, a Writers Guild show with a nice paycheck and, like, I feel like I'm on my way, and then boom, the rug gets pulled out from under you. But, like, I guess it kind of prepared me for for the way our industry works, as you know. I mean, it's
Right.
just so volatile. There's no either highs and lows, and you have to just try to get not too high and not too low. It's what I'm trying to do, you know?
Not too high, not too low.
Right.
It's interesting,
Yeah,
and also, you whether or not it makes it to air or whatever, you get paid.
exactly.
So it's like you can get paid for work that no one ever sees, and that's just part of it too.
Absolutely. It's experience, right? If
Yes.
nothing else. Yeah.
So then that show was canceled.
Yeah.
Got your first paycheck as a writer,
Yeah.
and then what happened after that?
Then the same people were producing the Drew Carey Show, so they brought me on to be the script coordinator, which is like the head writer or head, writer's assistant back then,
Yeah.
and, I worked with, like, a lot of, like, great people, like, they were old sitcom pros. I think we had, like, 8 executive producers because in those days, you just kept moving up, like, the sitcom orders were much longer, there was more money, they had much more writing budget. So these guys were old pros, and they taught me so much. It was awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where was the Drew Carey Show in its
The last 2 so the 8th and ninth season, which were the last 2
so it was
seasons.
already huge.
It was a
Definitely.
huge hit,
I
yeah.
remember. I love that show.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was starting to fade a little bit when I was there, but all of these great writers were still there. I was in the room with them every day. They could, like we'd have a run through, and then they would bang out a rewrite in, like, 40 minutes. It was, like, insane. They were just such pros. They just knew it so well.
Huh.
And it was great, and they're all really cool. They're all supportive. They would read my specs and give me notes, and, like, I try to pass that on when I have, like, younger writers coming up to me as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What did you kinda glean from that?
I think, what I learned really is, like, the importance of structure. That's, like, the number one thing as we know in our business. You have to have the framework for the show or nothing will work. So the 3-act structure, just, going to that low point, having the twist, having the resolution, and just, like, making sure you have that nailed down, and then from there, you have your characters. Make sure you're writing each joke in a voice that only this character could deliver, making sure your dialogue's not generic and, trying to find funny situations to put them in. Yeah.
Wow. And so I was curious because I don't have experience in live action, but relating it to story breaks and animation,
Yeah.
and it's like that what you're saying is kind of universal
Absolutely,
storytelling.
100%. Yeah.
And then now you're kind of really leveling up your game as a writer, it seems at this point.
Yeah, I was writing more specs. I wrote 2 episodes of the show that were well received, and that was great, but then that show also got canceled. So I think I might have been on the trajectory to being put on the staff as a staff writer, but, that's just how it goes.
Right.
But luckily, I met a writer on that show who had come off SNL, my friend Hugh Fink, who's a great, stand-up and also a writer, and he was developing a show for Comedy Central, and he's like, "Have you ever thought about doing late night? I think you're funny. Can you help me out?" And so I came on and we did this show called The Showbiz Show with David Spade.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that.
I came on as a writer's assistant, and, I ended up getting quite a bit of material in the pilot because he let me write as much as I wanted, so they put me on the staff when it got picked up. Yeah,
Wow.
so
And so you were hired as a
as a writer's assistant for
writer's
the
assistant,
pilot, yeah.
but you kinda over delivered
Yeah,
your way into a staff
yeah,
job.
and to Hugh's credit, he said, "You write jokes just like everyone else, you submit as much as you want, as long as you're getting your other work done, you are welcome to pitch and do anything you want," which is great, yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
wow.
right,
And that was the Showbiz Show, and then,
yeah.
and what was, like, the learning curve like for that kind of format?
It was I had read, like, a lot of, like, jokes, like, samples and stuff before I got there, but it is a very different skill set than storytelling,
Yeah.
it's especially with that show, we focus really on entertainment, so we're reading all these entertainment stories, and then, you learn, like, quickly, quick setup, and then get to the punchline quickly,
Mm.
the last word of the sort of punchline is the funny word, build to that, and try to just, like, churn it out.
I love
Yeah,
this is fascinating.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, I think David Mamet
Mhm.
would call it, like, shaving syllables.
Yes, exactly.
Huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that is something the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Right.
And so at first I was, like, writing these long setups and everything, and Spade didn't want that, he wanted everything short, and so that I realized, "Okay, let's shorten this up, let's get to the heart and figure out what the funny thing is and get to it quickly."
Right,
Right.
and I'm thinking back, are you writing, like, that, kind of his commentary on the news? Like,
Yes,
it's not just an opening monologue, per
right.
se, but it's, like, him going over the
Topical
headline,
jokes, yeah,
topical jokes,
yeah,
and so you're learning the new kind of a new structure of writing, which is
exactly.
joke writing,
Yes.
and so it's and I love hearing you say that, so I'm gonna repeat it. It's like it's set up, but as little as possible, and
Mhm.
then the last word is the funny word.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, and the setup obviously is the context. It's like
Yeah.
what you need to know for this to be funny.
Right, Kim Kardashian did this, oh, isn't she wacky, something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Ah, that's so cool.
yeah,
And so, yeah, okay,
yeah.
and you're finding that you really take to this.
Yeah, it was super fun, like, it was cool, and, the difference between especially what we do in animation is, like, in a late night show, what you write is on that night, where
Yeah,
with us, it's what, 2 years,
it's 2
something
years.
it's
It
crazy,
is. It is. You're like 3
Right.
jobs away.
Yeah,
Well, that's
yeah,
it. So the pace is probably faster.
fast pace, yeah, that was a weekly show. When I was doing
Right.
Kimmel later, it was nightly, so that was, like, a really huge turnaround, like a fast turnaround, I should say.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and, just curious, like, you're honing your joke writing at
Yeah.
that time. You find that you could bring a lot of that to the animation work you do now?
I try to, yeah. I think that's one of the things that has helped me get jobs is because I have this sort of different kind of perspective and background.
Right.
Um, yeah, when I'm looking at any animated project, my first thing is like, what is the sort of comedic angle, right? Like, I try to approach it from that way. Like, how can we make this funny? What's funny about these characters? What situations can we put in? What does this location, how could that lead to sight gags or whatever? And then, of course, we know that the real idea with kids animation is what's the heart and what's the emotion, right? So that's
Yes.
the part that you have to, like, bring in. I approach it from the comedy, but then, of course, we know that we have to really make sure that we have
Yeah.
an emotional resonance with the characters and everything else.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
imagine it must give your writing an economy, like, just very tight kind
yeah,
of, I mean, it's not one to one completely because
right,
the demographic's different, but just that kind of thinking, "Although we don't need this, we don't need this," and
right,
you're
right.
used to just, cutting things.
Yeah, trying to economize your words as much as
Right,
you can, right?
right.
Yeah,
And
and
so
yeah,
yeah,
and with
yeah.
kids stuff, especially now, especially as, we're both doing stuff for Disney, they want it sort of younger and they want it very simple. So being able to write in that way without a lot of words has actually helped me? Right.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
funny too. I've had writers in here who say I think it was Scott Gray
Mhm.
who said,
Oh, love Scott, yeah,
yeah, who said,
yeah.
comparing to the beginning of his career to now, everything he's worked on is getting shorter and shorter.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, I heard that episode, it's so
It's
true.
like, oh my, and I'm like, even for me, being here,
Yeah.
less time, it's true.
While I was doing it, I got hired on a show called WordGirl that you mentioned, that a
Yes.
friend of mine who was, like, my first mentor was doing, and he's like, "Have you ever thought about kid stuff? I think you're funny, can you help me with this?" So I ended up going over there, I was like, I don't know about kids, it's not really my thing," but it was super fun, it was awesome, I wrote 13 episodes, we won an Emmy, it was great, and, so while I was doing that, I was sort of like, "Okay, I'm developing in the kids world," but then I got a call to come work for Jimmy Kimmel as well, so, like, I did the submission, I got hired on Kimmel, and then I was doing the kid stuff on the side, and it was great, to have, like, those 2 different experiences,
Yes. Could you talk
uh
about
yeah,
the package you put together for Jimmy Kimmel?
sure, yeah. So, it's interesting, at at one point, there was sort of like a not a standard, but, like, it was usually, like, topical jokes, a few ideas for bits and sketches. But then the Writers Guild got involved and said, "Oh, you can't ask for all this free work." So, like,
Mm.
they told me they said, "We want you to do something for us." I'm like, "Alright, what do you want?" They're like, We're not allowed to tell you. So, because the guild doesn't want us to ask for free work. So, you just put something that you think would work together." So, it was, I think, a page of monologue jokes and maybe, like, 6 ideas for bits that they could do on the show.
Right.
And that's sort of standard. Some ask for more of, like, fully written out sketches, which it's hard, that's a lot of work, but that's generally the format. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he was on the air at the time, so
Yeah.
you were familiar with the format of
Oh,
the
yeah.
show,
Mhm.
and so you wrote to him. I mean,
Yes.
wrote to his voice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Uh-huh,
Yeah.
and then you submitted it, and then how did
Yeah.
that go?
And it was great. Yeah, they got hired there. And it was interesting because it's just like like I said, with a daily show, it's like you just like strap on headphones and write 50 jokes and just churn them out. Boom, 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 boom. So it was a great exercise because it's like you're on a deadline all the time. And then at night you get more like headlines and you write more. And then the next morning you're writing. It's just like, and like maybe 5% of it gets used, probably less
Right.
and so it's like, you're just churning out material
Wow,
constantly.
so what is that
Yeah.
position called? Like a staff
Staff
writer?
writer.
A
Yeah.
staff writer on the show,
Mhm.
and it's literally churning out jokes,
Yes.
and how would like, what would your day look like?
So we would usually in the morning we would get the writer's assistant would email us a bunch of new premises basically that we'd have to write to. So you'd wake up in the morning, you'd write those. We'd go in around 11. We'd have like a lunch. Jamie would look over all the jokes. This is what I want to do. So write more on this topic. I don't want more of this topic. If you're writing like a bit or something that's like a little bit more produced, then you'd be in charge of like working with the editors. Or if you have to shoot something, you would go shoot that. It was just super fast turnaround. And
And it was all for that night?
yeah,
And what time was taping?
5:30. Yeah.
5:30.
Yeah.
So it's not even that night, it's like,
Yeah, it's
5
crazy.
hours later.
Right, and sometimes you have something that maybe it's not as topical, so or it's more produced, so you have, like, a little bit more time to work on it.
A
Yeah.
little bit more time, right,
Right.
right, and then how would, like, news of the day impact the joke lineup? Like, if something came up last minute,
Then yeah.
we need to address that, what
Yep.
would that look like?
Exactly what you just said. Yeah, Jimmy would be like, "Hey, guys, I want this. Like, write jokes about this. We need to get this on right now." And then use just like a fire drill, and everyone's just churning it out. You have 20 minutes, get it done.
Wow,
But
and
but
I I'm just like, that's just such a foreign, like, way to think,
yeah.
that kind of just straight joke writing, which is so interesting. Could you talk about, like, how you would approach that? You get a headline or you get a topic.
Yeah.
Is there something that you do to
Yeah, I mean, the way I did it was whenever I get something like, okay, like think, what is a funny angle? What is ridiculous about this story? What is something that hasn't been said about this particular topic? And try to get the sort of idea of where you're going in your mind, and then you build to that with the setup on the punchline.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And
and yeah,
yeah.
and it's hard because in a late night show, they want you to be completely original, but you also have to write in the host's voice. So like it's like weird dynamic where you have to bring your own thing to it, but it has to be something that sounds like it comes from him or her. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and if you had to describe his voice,
Yeah.
how would you describe it? Compared to, like, a Letterman
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Ferguson, which are all a similar genre.
Yeah, yeah,
Hilarious.
yeah. I think he's not afraid to go after people in a good way. I mean, Letterman was that way too, but Jimmy is probably the smartest person I've ever met, and just like
Really?
very, very like knew what he wanted to say, and just direct, and also just funny. Like just not like Conan in the self-deprecating way or Letterman where it's a little more wry, but Jimmy he would just like if something was ridiculous, he would just call him out. That's his thing. And even to this day, you see it with Trump and everything.
Right.
That's what he's doing.
Huh.
Yeah.
And interesting, and what made him what are other things that made him kind of that just so brilliant?
I mean, he just, like, had an incredible knowledge about everything, about art, about music, about TV, and then he was super involved in the show. Every aspect of it, every still that showed up in the, in the video packages, everything. He would weigh in and make sure that his voice was there, and he was just really smart about it. Like, he just knew what he wanted. He knew, "Okay, cut this works, this doesn't," and just, like, I don't know, I think he just naturally has this, like, gift, you know?
Huh.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I
yeah,
know his history from
yeah.
early on in the Man Show,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then he hosted Win Binstein's Money for a period of time,
yeah.
and so I mean, he's really just come up just through
It's
the ranks of
crazy. Yeah,
different kinds of television, but always
right.
just that voice,
Yeah,
right? Right?
yeah.
And now it's kind of his own show where he could
Yeah, yeah, he's got a lot of clout now. He can kinda do what he wants, which is cool. Yeah, and then I picked up, I started working for Norm Macdonald as well. He had this podcast where they just had, like, crazy jokes at the end, so a few other guys and I would write these, and then he went on to Netflix, so I was just doing freelance joke writing for him as well.
Yeah.
And then I got a call for a staff job on, Chicken Squad, which is another Disney
Yes.
Junior show.
This is your show, great,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that was my first kid staff job, and especially for younger kids, I wasn't sure, but I was like I took it and I was psyched.
What about your professional writing habits? Like, were there times when you would be expected to churn out jokes and you would just be stuck? Or would you be overthinking? Or how did you
Yeah,
kind of develop your professional habits?
that's a good question, especially with joke writing, like, you don't have time to be stuck, you just can't. Like, you just have to churn something out, even if it's not great. Usually, you can
Mhm.
try to hone it or you go back, you write a joke, write a bunch, then you go back, you hone it, but you don't, especially, like, on a show like Kimmel where it's like, we have this hard deadline. If you're late, people are gonna be pissed. So it's like, you can't get stuck. You just have to just plow through it,
And if there's one that you're stuck on, just cut it and
Yeah,
go to the next one.
exactly. Yep.
Is there anything that you can think of that you're particularly proud of? A joke that still kind of stays with you?
Uh-huh. Huh. I did write a joke for Amy Poehler on Weekend Update, and it was God, I can't remember what the setup was. It was about something with, like, during there were, like, these unfortunately, it's not a funny topic, but photos of, like, uh, detainees, I think, in Iraq that were being
Right.
tortured, unfortunately,
Right.
and they're like, "Oh, we're not gonna unfortunately, the pictures haven't yet been released, so," and the punchline is, "Well, we'll just have to wait for Dick Cheney's Christmas cards." Right? And and it got a good response, and it was cool, like, they do that. Yeah, right, yeah.
Well,
So, right,
okay,
yeah,
that's fantastic because that is,
yeah,
I mean, you're using him as an example for a reason because he has a particular reputation or
yeah,
had at the time.
right,
You're assuming a certain amount of knowledge in the audience
yeah,
to make that connection of why it's funny.
right,
As an example that
right,
that wasn't, like, a happy topic, but some of it is finding the humor in
right.
dark things or things that are taboo or tough, and that
Mhm.
was just part of it. Could you talk about, like, just finding that?
Yeah,
It's not all Kim Kardashian might be like, "Okay, that's" no one's gonna be offended by a Kim Kardashian
yeah, yeah,
necessarily,
right.
and so you kinda have to keep both, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, I think the key is figure out who are you making fun of? We're certainly not making fun of any prisoners or not
right.
making fun of people being tortured. We're making fun of this guy who is probably overreaching with some of his vice presidential power. So he's
Yes.
the target. So that's how you have to think about it, right? You don't punch down, you punch up, basically, is what they say.
Yes.
You don't go after someone who's down on their luck or just like take a shot at someone who's having like a hard time in their life. But if someone's acting like a jerk or a hypocrite or whatever,
Yeah.
then that's the angle, and you go after it that way,
Yeah.
right?
What
Yeah,
power. Someone in power like that
exactly.
is
Yes,
forever kinda punching up, and that's
exactly.
yeah, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of
But
sense.
you have to be careful because, you don't wanna come off as seeming like you're mocking a serious situation. You have to really parse your words and make sure that you're really honing in on exactly what it is you wanna say with the punchline.
What about jokes that are, like, evergreen?
For those shows, it was, always topical. For Norm, when I was writing for him, they would shoot the podcast like a month or 2 before.
Uh,
So they want evergreen jokes. And those, I don't know if you know Norm Macdonald, just irreverent, kind of
yeah.
just like,
Well, he's
you know
so specific too, and
Yeah,
this is what
yeah.
he was. I assume the people that you would write for, obviously, you had an awareness of them already. Would you
Mhm.
do any deeper research, like, for Norm or for things like that, where you kinda go a little
I mean, Norm, I grew up on Weekend Update. I knew his voice so well that it was really fun to try to write in that voice, like as you said, he was so specific about
yeah.
the way he delivered his jokes. And so that really informed me as a writer coming up, just having heard him when I was younger, like that, the way he delivered his jokes, the way he did his punchlines, that was always in the back of my head. It was influencing me in ways I didn't know even before I started working for him. Yeah.
Mm. Were there things that you, because they're so different,
Yeah.
um, things that were kind of the same out of all those kind of late night hosts, like kind of universal things about writing jokes?
Yeah, I mean, other than just the structure, which is, the setup and the punchline and the topicality,
Uh,
it's I'm trying to think. It's there are things that are similar, which is that they always all of them, like, wanna go after, like you said, go after whoever's in power. So you have that as sort of the underlying thing, even with Spade, which was entertainment, we'd go after, people who are, jerks and celebrities who are being, like,
right,
entitled or whatever.
right.
So we came at it always from that angle with all of them. But no, all of their voices were pretty distinct. And so that's the thing. You really have to be specific when you're writing the jokes. Like a joke for Spade wouldn't work for Kimmel. A joke for Norm wouldn't work for Weekend. Well, when he was on Weekend Update, it worked. But when I
Right.
was writing for it, it wouldn't. So there are universal things, as in, this is the angle we want. And you can go after the same angle, but you have to phrase it and you have to word it in a very different way depending on who's delivering it.
Yeah, yeah. Was that kind of the learning curve of every show?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
When I was working for Kimmel, he had guys who had been working for him since the Man Show days, so they knew his voice so well. It was like he was like, in their head basically. And I came on late and, I was only there for a short time and I was just trying to get his voice and I think I did, but it's definitely a learning curve. Yeah.
It is.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and you talk a lot about just
Yeah.
on your own writing jokes, but would you guys workshop them in terms, was there like a writer's room on those kinds
On
of
that
shows?
per on that particular show, no. We would send it directly to Jimmy and the head writer, and he would just figure out what he wanted and what he didn't want. I think before I got there, when they were first starting, they did have more of a writer's room, but I think they just wanted to his goal was to just generate as much material as possible so he has the most to choose from, and that just meant, like, don't waste time in the room, just get me everything you can immediately. Yeah, right. Yeah,
So you're literally submitting something, how many jokes do you think?
50 probably a day. Yeah,
50.
right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you're getting prompted by the writer's
Yes,
assistant,
he would send out headlines that Jimmy wanted to cover.
and anything that you would bring to it that you were like, "Well, maybe."
You could do that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and once in a while we get through, but mostly he liked to have like a few different stories and have a couple jokes on each rather than cover a lot of different stories. That was his thing, like, you
Ah,
know, so
couple stories and then go a little deeper.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Now with, Chicken Squad,
Yeah.
you're finding the kid space is also something that you're taking to,
Yeah.
that you're learning how to kinda write in that kind of voice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that was great because, like, I had kids that were in that age. So,
Yeah.
like, I would get stories from them. I would see what they responded to, what they watched, what they liked, and I would try to, as we do with Disney, a lot of shows, we have the theme. So I try to think about what are they learning in school? What are they learning from their friends? And you incorporate that as much as you can. And it was great, but like I'm a repressed wasp. So like this like emotional part was challenging at the beginning. The comedy was easy.
Right.
Like having that emotional core that I really honed when I was working on Chicken Squad and these other kid shows, it's been huge.
Going from Chicken
Yeah.
Squad,
Yeah.
how did you find your next gig at that
So
point?
after that ended, I did a little freelance. I think that's when we met on Tots. I did an episode of Tots.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Disney liked me. They sort of were trying to give me freelance when they could. And then I got recommended for Firebuds, which was
Yeah.
another show created by Craig Gerber, who was a great guy.
Oh, yeah.
Sophia the
Sophia,
First,
Elena.
Elena of Avalor.
Yeah.
And my Tom Rogers and Rachel Ritterman had worked with him on Elena. They recommended me. So I came on there in the second season, and that was great. It was a great group of people, super smart writers, great story editors.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it was very similar in that, it's the Disney thing, heart and humor is what they want.
Art and humor.
Right.
And it seems like you've always done that
Yeah.
your whole career, is just switch back and forth between so many different kinds
Yeah.
of not just gigs, but like ways to write and demographics.
Right.
And is that just kind of something that you just learn to mentally navigate? Oh,
Yeah, I think so, and you try not to let like the edginess of a late night show bleed into a kid show or if you're writing, or
right.
too simple with your writing like we would be in a kid show with an adult show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I'm able to kind of switch back and forth. But like I said, like what we talked about, anything narrative, that structure is the same, as you said, for everything, no
Yeah.
matter what you're writing.
Hmm.
The heart, the emotional, the theme, whether, we hit it sort of hard in Disney, but in other shows, you still have a theme, and so
Yes.
all of that translates. Yeah.
Huh.
The
And
tone is different and the type of jokes are different, but, the
yeah.
stories and the heart are the same.
And
Yeah.
what about your professional writing habits in the kid space where it's not just jokes.
Yeah.
Were there times when you'd be stuck and you feel like you have a knot that you're trying to untie? Like what kinds of things do you do
Yeah.
that you feel that way?
I will say, like, I've been incorporating this thing when I'm writing scripts now, like, I think one of your other guests might have said a version of this too, but I was listening to, Judd Apatow, I think it was on his, masterclass, and he
Oh,
talks about down and up, which means get everything down and then punch it up. So just like I think someone might have
yes,
mentioned a vomit draft on your
yes,
podcast. So I've been
yeah.
trying to do that more because like I'll get so precious and I'll get hung up on something and I'm like wasting all this time. Whereas if I just kind of like, okay, put a pin in this and come back, and then you come back 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh, this is easy. But if you're
Yes.
just drilling and you're staring at it, for me, it's like crippling. So that's the one thing that I've really tried to incorporate now with my writing.
That's
Yeah.
so funny
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
feel like the biggest, step up for me from, like, just professionally
Yeah.
is because I feel like it's always hard.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't get but in a good way,
Yeah.
in a way that engages your mind.
Mhm.
But the thing that I've learned is the sooner I can get it out of my head and onto the page
Mhm.
is better.
Yeah.
And because I say that that phrase, "Writing is rewriting,"
Yeah.
is like the truest professional phrase,
So
like,
true.
ever,
Yeah.
and that's why because I think you get stuck when it's in your head,
Yeah.
and so if you can get it down, then you can start moving it and messing with it,
Yeah.
and so you find that just get it down and then
Yeah.
punch it
Yeah.
out, which I like that.
Yeah, I think the way that Apatow phrased it was really good. I'm trying to keep that in my head because, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I get so like precious. I'm like, well, why can't I figure out this moment? This is beating myself up. Like, wow, this is so easy. Why can't you do it? And then,
Yeah.
then you just get a little fresh perspective. You look, I'm like, oh, okay, it's not that hard.
What do you feel makes a good staff writer on a kid's show?
At a kid show, a staff writer, I think you have to be collaborative. Number one,
Mm,
you have to be listening to other people. You have to be contributing as much as you can. You don't want to talk just for the sake of talking. You want to
mhm,
pitch good stuff. And if someone else pitches something, piggyback off it. Hey, yeah, that's good. We could do this. We could do that.
mhm,
So room wise, that's that. And then as far as like, generating stories, you can come at it two ways. You can start with a theme, or you can
mhm,
start with like, this is something that happened, and I think this could be a cool story if this villain or whatever did this.
mm,
So there's like kind of two different ways to generate, and then you try to
yeah.
incorporate those two things, as I'm sure you know from your experience.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Right.
there a way that you lean towards in terms of just coming up with ideas?
It's funny having worked for Disney for a long time, and they're very theme oriented, as you know, and they're lesson oriented. So when I'm doing the kids stuff now, I really think about like what's something that we could teach, what's a lesson, and then I
Mhm.
go from there, which is completely antithetical to how I'd write something for an adult show or anything like that. But I've sort of been trained to do it that way. Um, but my instinct is okay, we have all right, maybe this theme could work, but like how do we make this funny?
Yes.
What are we gonna do? What's the big comedic moment? What's the big, third act showdown or whatever it is that we're building to?
Right.
So
So you kinda almost reverse engineer what you want kids to take away.
yes, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah.
You talked about, developing and pitching,
Mhm.
and just, like, nuts and bolts, do you have, like, some do's and don'ts that you've learned when it comes to developing and pitching?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as far as pitching, the big thing everyone tells you is like, why are you the one to write this? What is the personal significance to this? How does it resonate with you? So start
Mm,
with that. When you go into a pitch, this is why I want to tell this story. This is, where I've come from. This is how my experience informs it. And then, that sort of, leads you into it. And then for me, it's just like, okay, now what is the central emotional dynamic and what is the comedic dynamic? How do you meld those two things? Those are the two things I'm looking for.
the emotional and the comedic dynamic.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important? I'm really curious, like,
Yeah.
why executives seem so interested in why you?
I know, it's funny, I was just talking to a friend of mine about that. I think just because there's so much content out there right now, they just want, like, something that seems a little bit more personal. Of course, once you pitch it and sell it, it's gonna be revised 1,000 times, and it might not be as personal in that final version,
Yeah.
but I think they want people with what they call, unique voices. And
Mhm.
so coming at it from a perspective where they could see that you're passionate about it and that you have a resonance, I think they in their mind, and probably truthfully, that will make you
Yeah.
a better developer,
Yeah.
essentially.
And
Right.
and, how are you taking notes, and ho was there ever a time in your career where you started to kinda took notes personally and had to kinda develop, like, that thicker skin? Or
Oh,
some
yeah.
some guys out of the gate are
Oh, yeah.
detached, and some are like, "My career's over."
Oh, boy.
Is
Yeah.
that something you had to learn?
Well, yes, I did have to learn that, yes, like, look, let's be honest, we're all emotional little babies. I mean, we're all in this for
We
we
all want, like,
yeah.
compliments and pat on the backs
Yes.
in our
We're
emails and
sensitive little babies, all of us. And that's why we got into it, and that's why we're good at our job. But it's
yeah.
when I was first coming up, I would get notes, and I'd be like, "Oh, this is so stupid. I can't believe they would do this." Blah, blah, blah. I would never say that, but in
Yeah.
my head, I'd be like, and then, as you get a little bit more experience, you're like, "Okay, that's fine. You know what? This isn't my show. I'm helping someone else. This is their vision. This is
Yeah.
what the network wants." You just do it, and you try not to get, like I said, too high or too low because it is easy to take it personally because we're sensitive, and it's like, but no, this is not personal, and same with the accolades, like, okay, don't get too high on that, they like that, that's good, but don't, like, think you're the best writer in the world now because they
Right.
liked your script,
Right. Because the
so
next email you're gonna get
right.
won't have an exclamation point. You're gonna think they hate it.
Yes, the exclamation points, that's right, exactly right. Yeah, yeah. "Great job!" Exclamation po "Oh, no, it's superior. They hate me."
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm off
right.
the project.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's something you said in the beginning, which was not to feel too high or too low,
Right,
and to kind of just keep your head down and work.
right.
And I have to think that you have to do that to be as prolific as you've been,
Mhm.
even in joke writing. Like, you can't get hung up on one thing or in
Right.
your own head. You got to just keep getting it down and down and down.
Yeah, I think that's right, I mean, and it's very hard because, like, I want accolades, I'll be honest, like, I'm a needy little baby, like I said, like, but it's like, if I don't get them, that doesn't mean I'm not a good person or I'm not a good writer,
Right.
but yes,
Right.
because, I mean, I've had awesome breaks and I've had horrible not horrible, but bad things happen, and it's just the way our career is, it's
Right.
just the way it is, and
Yeah.
and going into it, you have to know that,
Yes.
and I don't know if I fully recognize that it's not a normal job where you have a trajectory like this,
Right.
choo, 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 choo.
It's like the EKG.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And someone who is an intern could be your boss in 2 years. It's true.
Yeah.
People talk about it, but
Yeah.
100% true in our
Absolutely.
industry.
Yeah.
Right.
And was there a time when you were writing jokes that you felt like, oh, this one's really going to get through,
Yeah.
and then it falls flat
Oh,
for whatever reason
yeah. All the time.
all the time?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're like, "All right, well, I don't know why that didn't work, but I think it's the best joke I wrote." And then, like, you have some throwaway joke, and they're like, "Oh, this is great." Like, "What? Okay." And even in, like, kid stuff, like, with I remember, like, writing episodes of Chicken Spot, I had this big joke, and, like, my kids wouldn't respond to it, but then, like, someone would fall down, and they'd be like, "Ah!" I'd be like, "Okay, well," like,
True.
this simple, like, physical comedy will play great, and, like, something that's, like, cleverly worded is like, "Nah, that doesn't resonate."
Yeah,
Right,
that's true. I mean,
right, yeah.
I remember
Yeah,
being at a testing session, where they
yeah,
test our
yeah, right,
early on in the season. Disney or most of the major networks will
right.
go to a preschool to test
Yeah.
stories, and one of my stories was being tested, and I was a script coordinator.
Uh-huh.
I was on Tots,
Uh-huh.
and I was all excited, and some kid went, "This is taking forever."
Oh, no. Oh,
And that's really hard. Oh gosh.
yeah.
This is like my whole
Yeah,
career,
right.
and it's humbling. And then at the end, they were like, "Do you think these main characters did a good job?" And the kid was like, "No." I was like, "Oh no."
Oh,
But but of course, my life didn't end.
yeah, but it's hilarious.
It is that, like, you're not going to get any more honest feedback.
Future exec. Yeah, 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 right.
I think that's what they're really doing.
Yeah,
It's what.
right, right.
John, is there a moment in your career that you look back on as your proudest moment?
It's a good question. I think looking back now at WordGirl, the show that I did, I take no responsibility. I didn't create the show or anything, but like writing on that, having some success and like making a really funny show that also had like an educational component, like being able to write in a way like it was like playing on superhero tropes. It was very comedy focused. It was sort of arch and kind of like self-aware in some great ways, all this kind of stuff I love to write. But it also like had a like resonance. Like it was like we're teaching kids like every day there's two words and we're teaching them these words. And like I meet people now who are younger, and they're like, "Oh, I love that show coming up." And like so like to be part of something like that and on PBS, which as we know is, maybe hopefully not on its last legs, but
Yeah.
to do something that like resonated and actually helped people and was still really funny and rewarding. That was probably like the thing that I'm most proud of.
That's something that, bosses I've had
Yeah.
talk about that show
Mhm.
as having an impact,
Oh,
and being a show
100%.
that is one of those shows that kinda rised above in
It
terms
did,
of just
yeah,
looking back and
yeah.
and seeing what people still think about. and that's the show that comes up.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've heard that too, and, like I said, I take no credit for it. I was just a freelance writer, but it was just very, like,
Huh.
it was rewarding, to see that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Um, this is something I ask every guest,
yeah.
and I'm curious, is there a rule in our industry, whether it's a writing rule or a rule about career or whatever, that you think is worth breaking?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and some of your guests may have already said this, but for me, it's don't allow yourself to be pigeonholed. Like, if you wanna do something, do it. Like, you can get hired for one thing, but, like, like, I love the kids' world. It's awesome. I'm so grateful to be working. I love the people, but I also wanna do some other stuff. And so, don't let anyone tell you you can't do something else. Like, one of the best writers I've ever worked with is a kids writer, but he also is, like, writes these super dark horror features that are amazing, and he's just it's Jeremy Shipp, I'll give him a shout out. And he,
His name. I've
yeah,
heard his name.
yeah,
I never.
he was our story editor on Firebuds, great, super
Oh,
smart.
cool.
And, like, and I try to take a lesson from him, like, yeah, do this, that's great. You can do multiple things. Don't let anyone tell you you can't do something just because they haven't seen it produced or you've been doing this thing for a few years.
Mm.
So that's the one thing that I really am adamant about.
I love that. I
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah,
very much so the industry will pigeonhole you.
yeah.
We never pigeonhole ourselves.
No,
I
of
mean,
course.
unless we buy into it,
Right.
but we don't think of ourselves that way, but the industry does.
Yes, right.
And you feel like at times in your career, have you had to kind of come out of being pigeonholed?
I have, yeah, and it's like, um, especially in the kids world, it's like, oh, okay, you can only do kids, you've only done that. And, so I try to write as much as I can on the side. I get it out to the other people. I show it. I use my adult stuff as samples for kids and for other stuff and, try to like do everything I can to, keep working on that stuff as well.
You said you sometimes use adult samples for kid shows.
Yeah, like,
That's interesting.
yeah, for older, for 6 to 11, not as
To
much for
11.
preschool, but yeah.
And I've heard that,
Yeah.
like, I heard on the Rugrats,
Uh-huh.
they were looking for, sitcom samples, 'cause it was essentially and Rugrats is not a preschool show,
No,
but they want that sitcom mentality. Is
right.
that kind of your thinking behind using?
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Huh.
The show you can write jokes, especially 6 to 11 is a little bit more joke focused than preschool, as you know. So they want to
Right.
see that you can do the right structure. It's still, as we said, the same structure, and that you can write funny and write good character moments.
Yeah, and
Right.
you think the people reading that go, "If you can write, you can write."
That's that's my hope. And generally, I feel like that's the case. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right.
John, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
This is
This
such
is
a
great.
great conversation. I
Thank you.
love
Good.
getting an insight
Yeah.
into your writing process and
Yeah.
your background and how your comedy background and preschool kind of came together
Yeah.
and just how you work. This is just such a delight. So thank you for
Thank you. This is awesome, man. Super fun. Really appreciate it.
Hey, before you go, thank you for listening. If you want more episodes like this, make sure to hit that follow or subscribe button. And while you're at it, grab my free guide, The Rule Breaker's Guide to Finding Your Creative Voice. It's a brutally honest roadmap I put together, built from the lessons, mistakes, and breakthroughs I've collected along my journey as a writer. You can download it for free at storyseriespodcast.com. See you in the next one.